Hey, hello Cloud Gurus, and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture we're going to look at CloudWatch, and this is a lab, so you will need to log into the AWS console. And we have actually already used CloudWatch earlier on in the course. We used it when we wanted to create a billing alarm. So every time our AWS bill went over $10, it would automatically email us and alert us to that. So in this lecture we're going to create some dashboards. We're going to add widgets to our dashboards. We're going to look at CloudWatch events. We're going to look at CloudWatch logs, and then we're also going to look at other types of alarms that we can use, so things like CPU utilization rather than just billing alarms. So you'll need to log into the AWS console. Okay, so here I am in the AWS console. I'm just going to go over to services and go into EC2, make sure I have an EC2 instance that's running, which I do. So if I click on EC2, you can see just down here under this tab we've got monitoring. And if you click on monitoring, you can see that we've got basic monitoring enabled on this EC2 instance. Now, basic monitoring just means that it's monitoring different metrics every 5 minutes. And we can enable detailed monitoring, which drops it down to 1 minute. But if you do that, you're going to go outside of free tier. And we can actually just have a quick look here. We can look at our CPU utilization. We can look at our CPU usage, credit usage. We can look at our credit balance. We've got a whole bunch of disk metrics. We've got our network metrics, and then we've got our status checks metrics. So let's go into CloudWatch and have a look. So we'll go back to the AWS console, go down to services. Now CloudWatch sits under the management tools. So go ahead and click in there. And now if we look off to the left-hand side, we'll see our different options. So we've got our dashboards, we've got our alarms, we've got our events, we've got our logs, and we've got our metrics. So let's start with dashboards. And you'll see I haven't created a dashboard yet before. So I'm going to go in and create dashboard. And I'm going to call this dashboard my EC2, or we'll call it my web server. So I want to know what's going on with my web server. And this dashboard will show everything that I need to know about my web server. So with dashboards, you've got widgets, and you've got 4 different types of widgets, and we'll look at each one in turn, but let's start with a text widget, and we're just going to create this. So text widgets are just basically there to make your dashboards look pretty, and it uses Markdown language, same language that you use for things like Medium or for Reddit, for example, if you're a Redditor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically delete out everything, and I'm just going to leave the headings in. So we're going to call this my web server, or my web server, and then over here I'm going to call it the subheading CPU utilization. And you see here that's a preview off to the right, so we'll go ahead and create that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add widgets underneath this. So let's start with a line widget. Go ahead and hit configure. And you can see here, remember CloudWatch isn't just for EC2, it's for any AWS service that's supported by CloudWatch. So you can see here I'm using application elastic load balancers, I'm using EBS, I'm using EC2, I'm using a normal elastic load balancer, and I've been using S3. If you have been playing with DynamoDB or RDS or anything like that previously, you'll see other metrics available to you here. So for this one, I want to go to EC2, and we're going to do my per instance metrics. And you can see here my instance name. So this is my web server. It's all got the same instance ID, and then it's got the different metric names. And if you just click up here, it will sort it by alphabetical order. And so this is a really important exam topic. What metrics are available by default for your EC2 instance? So it's always going to be CPU related, disk related, network related, and then a status check. And the status check is basically testing both at an instance level, so is that virtual machine up, and it's also checking at a host level, so is that hypervisor that's running that virtual machine up as well. CPU is going to be your credit balance and usage, and then your CPU utilization, and then disk is going to be your read bytes, write bytes, read ops, and write ops, and then network is going to be network in and out, network packets in and out, etc. What you are missing here obviously is RAM, so you don't see any RAM utilization. In order to do that, you need to create a custom metric, and that is outside the scope of this course, but we do cover how to do that in the SysOps Administrator course. But it's really important to remember things. Basically, if it's not here, it's going to be a custom metric. So if you want to track your EBS volume, how much storage space you're using up on your EBS volume, or if you want to track your RAM utilization, you would do that by creating a custom metric. And with custom metrics, you have to write a little bit of code and then run it on the EC2 instances, and they will report that back into CloudWatch. So what we're going to do now is we're going to click on CPU utilization and go ahead and hit create widget. And now you can see we've got this nice little line graph of my CPU utilization. And let's see if I can resize this just to make it a bit more, there we go, snazzy. So let's go ahead and add some more widgets. So we'll go in and add a widget. So this is a stacked area. It's basically going to color in underneath it. So we'll go in and click on EC2 per instance metrics. And we'll go in and just click up here to sort it by alphabetical order. We'll do our CPU utilization. And then you could also add additional, you might want to add in here your, your CPU credit usage and then your CPU balance, for example. So you can add in multiple things here. I'm going to just do CPU utilization and CPU credit usage so we can see the different color schemes. And then let's go in and add another widget, and this time we're just going to do a number, and this will tell us what the current CPU utilization is. So EC2 per instance metrics, click in here, and then we want to do CPU utilization, which is down here. Go ahead and hit create, and there you go. So now we've got this nice snazzy dashboard. It's for your web server. It's telling you what the CPU utilization is, and we've got different types of graphs. So you can create these different dashboards for anything basically within AWS that is supported with a CloudWatch. So we could do our application load balancers or our elastic load balancers or our EBS volumes, etc. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go over to alarms, and we're going to create an alarm for our CPU utilization. So you can see in here we've got all our different metrics. We've got our application elastic load balancers, our elastic load balancers, etc. So we want to go into EC2. Then we want to click in on CPU utilization. We can see here my CPU utilization. It seems to be spiking fairly regularly. So this one, if you hold your mouse over, you can see when it happens. So for me, it was spiking at about 7:30 in the morning. And it seems to just be randomly spiking. So I want to know when it's spiking so I can go in and investigate that. So I'm going to go ahead and hit next. So in here we have the name. So we're going to call this CPU utilization. And the description is my CPU is going over, let's say 80%. Go ahead and put that in. And so whenever CPU utilization is greater than or equal to, you must enter numeric characters in here. So we'll say 80 for one consecutive period. So how much is a consecutive period? Well, it's going to be with basic monitoring 5 minutes. With detailed monitoring, it's going to be 1 minute. So I'm just going to leave it in there as 5 minutes. And then whenever this state is in alarm, send notification to and select a notification list. So how do you want to hear about this particular alarm? And let's go ahead and create a new list. So we can put in here our email address. So I'm just going to make this up, but you would need to enter a valid email address in here because you actually need to subscribe to this topic. So it stops people from, basically spamming email accounts. So I'm just going to call this acloudguru@gmail.com, and we're just going to create a topic name. So we'll call it my CPU topic, and then go ahead and hit create alarm. And there we go. So it's asking us to confirm this email address. So it won't actually send us out any emails until we have confirmed this email address. So you have to log into your email and go in and click the confirmation link. And then after that, and you have a 72-hour window in which to do this, by the way. And then after that, you're basically ready to receive alarms. So if your CPU utilization goes over 80% for a period or an interval of 5 minutes, and that's because we've got basic monitoring turned on, then it will send us an automatic email. So that's a great way of proactively monitoring your environment. Okay, so in here we can see that my alarm state is okay. The name is CPU utilization, and the threshold is CPU utilization greater than or equal to 80 for 5 minutes. And that's because I'm on a basic monitoring, not detailed monitoring. And now it's just saying config status pending confirmation. That's just waiting for me to confirm my email address. Let's move over here to events. Now, events, you just need to understand at a high level what events are. You won't need to go in and configure any. So CloudWatch events help you respond to state changes in your AWS resources. So when resources change state, they automatically send events to an event stream, and then you create rules that match the selected events and route them to targets to take action. So they give a couple of examples here. This is probably the easiest one to understand. So automatically invoke a Lambda function to update your DNS entries when an event notifies you that an Amazon EC2 instance enters the running state. So it could be that you've turned on a web server and then you've got this little Lambda function, and basically what that little Lambda function does is it updates Route 53, which is Amazon's DNS service, and it basically would then say, as soon as this EC2 instance comes on, I need to update my domain name with the new public IP address. So that way you could resolve web traffic to that EC2 instance. So that's what CloudWatch Events does. It basically connects up different blocks of Amazon web services, and one event can trigger an action, and you create rules in order to do that. It is completely outside of the scope of both the solutions architect and developer associate exams, however. Let's move over to logs. Now, logs are really, really cool. They basically allow you to monitor your EC2 instances at the application level. So you can monitor HTTP response codes in your Apache logs, for example. You can even monitor down to into the actual kernel for your kernel logs. So what you do is you go in and you install an agent on your EC2 instance. This agent will then pass back monitoring data to CloudWatch logs, and then you'll be able to view the CloudWatch logs inside this log portal. We aren't going to go through it because, again, it's not very relevant to either the Solutions Architect Associate or Developer Associate exams, but you just need to understand what logs are at a high level. Logs are basically, you can go down into the application layer and log, different events in there. Whereas before, when we were looking at, our dashboards, we were actually just looking at logs at the host layer. So we're looking at like CPU utilization, we're looking at disk, we're looking at network, and we're looking at our status checks. And then in here we have our metrics, so you can actually just go in here and basically view your metrics automatically. So if we go to EC2 per instance and then just click in here and go, let's see if we can find CPU utilization, which is here, and then you'll be able to see it. So instead of creating dashboards and widgets and things, you can just view it all in metrics there. So what are my exam tips? Well, standard monitoring is always 5 minutes. Detailed monitoring is always 1 minute. And then what can you actually do with CloudWatch? Well, we just really covered off the main items. So you've got your dashboards, which is where you create awesome dashboards to see what's happening with your AWS environment. You can create alarms, which will allow you to set an alarm that will notify you when a particular thresholds are hit. We have events, so CloudWatch events help you respond to state changes in your AWS resources, and we use the example of an EC2 instance coming online. That would then basically trigger a Lambda function, which would then update your DNS so that when you go to mywebsite.com, you would be able to see that new EC2 instance. And then we had logs, and CloudWatch logs basically allows you to aggregate, monitor, and store logs within CloudWatch itself, and you do that by installing an agent on your EC2 server. Now, one of the other things that people often confuse in the exams, and it's certainly something that Amazon try and test you on, is the difference between CloudWatch and CloudTrail. Always remember that CloudWatch is for logging and for doing things like monitoring. So you're looking at like CPU utilization, which we kept using in the lab, whereas CloudTrail is for auditing. And CloudTrail will basically monitor your entire AWS environment. And if you go in and create a new user, for example, or you go in and create a new role, or you create a new S3 bucket, that's all logged through CloudTrail. So don't confuse CloudTrail with CloudWatch. It's something that students often do. Just remember that CloudWatch is for monitoring, and that's performance monitoring of your resources within AWS. And then CloudTrail is for auditing. It creates an audit trail of what people are doing with your AWS account. Okay, so that's it from me, guys. If you have any questions, please let me know. If not, feel free to move on to the next lecture. Thank you.